Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the Balkans, but I want to highlight that in many of my studies, one thing that occurred in all of those studies was that the organization that was involved in some sort of conflict or looking to improve their security or whatever the case may be, was that they really didn't understand the problem they were seeking to solve. And it's because the problem was deeply rooted and they could deal with what was the immediate impact, but had great difficulty in really understanding the root cause. And my theory is that if you don't deal with the root cause, it is sure to happen again. The Balkans, after World War I, became reorganized and named Yugoslavia. So, think of Yugoslavia became the rebranding of the Balkans. And then when Tito dies, they reverted back to where they were. Okay, let's get us to our first. And we're going to see a really attractive vacation spot that then descends into warfare.
Can you imagine a country where you can still find ancient towns ruined by a crystal clear sea? Yugoslavia is a country with a long, turbulent history. After World War II, it became a socialist federation made up of 6 republics and 2 autonomous regions. It speaks 5 official languages and prays to an Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, and Muslim god. This is no imaginary land. This is Yugoslavia.
In 1990, the federation of 6 republics that made up Yugoslavia was still united. But with the collapse of communism, the 2 major republics, Serbia and Croatia, fell under the sway of rival nationalisms. Serbia's president, Slobodan Milosevic, had been the first to inflame his people. The Serb threat provoked the people of neighboring Croatia to respond. In their first free elections, they chose the nationalist, Franjo Tuđman, as their president.
Danas je Krist triumfalno ušao u Jeruzalem, dočekan I pozdravljen od naroda kao Mesija. I glavni grad Hrvatske danas liči na Jeruzalem. Franjo Tuđman dolazi pred građane.
Mislim da je u tom vremenu trebalo daleko više suptilnosti, posebno kad se znalo da smo I one Srbe koji su bili za dogovor, koji su bili za Hrvatsku, dobijali protiv sebe.
For more than 35 years, Bosnia and the rest of Yugoslavia was ruled by Josip Broz Tito. His policy of brotherhood and unity suppressed ethnic tensions between Serbs, Muslims, and Croats. Following his death in 1980, the country began to fall apart.
Yugoslavia, a country at war with itself. Ever since Croatia and Slovenia declared their independence, a nation of republics is being dismantled by apparently unchecked force. Now it's feared that the buffer republic of Bosnia-Herzegovina could become the next theater of conflict.
Violence has broken out in the Republic of Bosnia.
We got a blank screen, Sal.
Okay.
Republic's population are Muslim.
Okay, do you have the video up there?
Yeah, now the video's up.
Okay.
31% are Serbs and 17% are Croats. The Muslims and Croats support independence. The Serbs are fiercely opposed to it.
Last night, the Serbs proclaimed a breakaway republic inside Bosnia, and today their leader, Radovan Karadzic, said they have to make their Serbian state whatever the cost may be. There is chaos and anarchy, no functioning central authority, and the United Nations, headquartered here, is apparently powerless to intervene. What remains of the Bosnian government has declared a state of war.
This is the Balkans. It's named for the Balkans mountains. These lands are drenched in blood, accumulated over thousands of years of empire-building war. The Balkans are selected for discussion because they exemplify a much broader history of the world. The Balkans represent a land of diversity. It consisted of 6 republics, 5 nations, 4 languages, 3 religions, and 2 alphabets, all held together under one umbrella. In past classes, I've suggested that human aggression, warfare, and slavery emerged as a byproduct of agriculture. My theory is that contemporary warfare and conflict is rooted in the change that was brought about by agriculture. Us humans split from the chimpanzees because the chimpanzees were very aggressive and uncooperative. Us humans changed, however, to be more like the chimps after we discovered control over food sources, because with that discovery of control over food sources came ideas of wealth, power, and greed. This change occurred over thousands of years. We think of events in the here and now, absent a broader, longer view. For example, we have Hamas attacks Israel, Israel counterattacks, passions of Jews and Palestinians are inflamed, and so on. The answer to it all is a 2-state solution, which I argue is the equivalent of saying to children who are fighting, both of you go to your rooms. Within the past 5,000 years, before there was an Israel or a Palestine, before there were Jews and Muslims, before there were political ideologies, people on these very lands were slaughtering each other in service of empire building.
Judy?
It is important for us to establish a perspective and remember that there was a time when the land on earth above water was joined together. There was nothing that said these lands will be Christian lands, these lands will be Muslim lands. There was nothing that said these will be Republicans and conservatives. These will be the liberals. There was none of that. Continents, as we know them today, were joined together as one landmass, molten rock and debris that extended above water. No part had a country name, an ethnic designation, or a religious affiliation. This rock broke up and drifted over millions of years to form the assorted pieces of the earth. Many wars have been fought over land, claimed by humans for their dominion. Many believe they come from a unique spot on Earth that makes them special. That spot, however, was once a part of all the other spots on Earth. Being born in America doesn't make you an American. It simply makes you a human. The continents, as we know them, drifted apart at a rate of speed equal to the speed by which fingernails grow, about 1 inch per year. Nature did not give these continents names. We humans contrived their names.
Continents move. Moving back in time, the Himalayas and Mount Everest disappear as the collision between India and Asia is reversed. Climates are changing. Australia joins Antarctica as India approaches. Going back 150 million years, the continents are joined in 3 large pieces. South America and Africa are on one landmass. India, Australia, and Antarctica form a second. North America, Europe, and Asia make a third. 225 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea exists. Let's watch this movement as it occurred going forward in time. As Pangaea splits into 3 large pieces, the Atlantic Ocean starts to form. India starts its race to collide with Asia. As the continents take their current locations, India and Asia collide, and the Himalayas and Mount Everest appear. What is next?
$180 million years ago, the North American plate is still moving away from the European and Asian plate. It's shifting about 1 inch each year, the same speed at which our fingernails grow. But fast forward 35 million years, and a new ocean forms, as well as new continents. The United States breaks away from Africa. The world as we know it takes shape. The chasm between the 2 continents fills, creating the Atlantic Ocean. And in the middle lies a volcano. Like before, currents deep beneath the Earth's crust move the plates again. The entire seafloor tears in 2 and is pushed up into a ridge of mountains and volcanoes. It grows higher than the Himalayas and longer than the Rockies. The water here is hot, as molten lava forces its way out from deep inside the earth. As the lava cools, it creates a new range of volcanic mountains and a new ocean floor. Pangaea breaks apart, and our world rearranges again.
And as the continents settle into place, humans emerge on what became the African continent. And then we discovered agriculture.
Farming is absolutely revolutionary. When we discovered how to farm, we suddenly increased the ability of the land to support us.
It's the difference between there being only a few million humans on the planet and there being billions of humans on the planet. Most humans alive today subsist on the products of the agricultural revolution, the byproducts of farming.
Humans were extremely good at hunting. One of the problems is about 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, most of the large animals that humans were hunting died out. We were simply very successful. In those locations where you no longer had game, you had a choice between dying, moving, or settling down and trying to survive and thrive on plant life.
Our ancestors were natural historians in their daily lives, and this was probably behind the domestication of plants. They probably noticed that if they took some of the seeds and rather than eating them, left them on the ground or put them in the compost heaps or the dumps near their camp, they grew.
Farming arises in many different places, totally unconnected with each other. And that is the beginning of civilization.
We had to come up with better tools, better ways to build our houses, to protect our land, to make our clothing and so forth. We had new materials to use, we had new plants to grow, and we started to develop organized societies.
You have to have a hierarchical system that's going to have somebody in charge to make sure that things are done. Farmers are invested in land. Inevitably, if there's more than one person farming, this brings them into conflict with one another.
When we moved from hunting and gathering, we stopped being predators and started becoming prey to a great extent.
Warfare kind of follows farming as a natural sequence.
You have stuff to lose. You have a vested interest. And we needed to create other things to protect that.
Farming is the most important ingredient in human civilization.
It is the seed from which everything grows. From the first crop to the notion of property, nation states, cities, empires. It is the roots, quite literally, of all society.
Did you just do this here? Okay. Okay, so the continents drifted, humans emerged, we survived as hunter-gatherers as we were taught by our ape family ancestors. It began in a spot we know of as the cradle of civilization. This is where agriculture was developed, the cradle of civilization. This is the Middle East. Taking control of sources of food was epic, changing everything about human existence. Depleted soils, however, compelled humans to move to new places where they could grow food. They drifted north into the area that we now know as the Balkans. When crops failed, people were starving and unable to return to hunter-gatherer life. They attacked those with food, and this led to empires. The first, the Akkadian Empire in the Middle East. Understand what empire means. It means attacking other people. It's raw brutality. It says, I have an empire and I want something bigger. I have defeated these other people in warfare. I've enslaved them. Keep building my excess, my wealth, my power. And I see someone else who's done the same thing, but they're getting too big. So I need to attack them before they're too big and they can attack me. And so we get into this cycle of building empires, empires collapsing, new empires emerging. But understand that when you say empire, it means raw brutality, bloodshed, loss of mothers, fathers, children, spouse. And all that bloodshed retains resentment that get passed on generation to generation, grievances that are unaddressed. People that are then enslaved and enraged, and all of that animosity, and it has taken place over thousands of years. All of the service, increasing excess wealth, trade and weaponry.
You may want to mute the music on the other thing. Basically, the music from the Mughal Empire is louder than you.
That's okay, Dave. Let's just keep going, okay?
Okay.
And so I wanted to highlight that because it brings to bear the, let's see, I have this one here. The enormous brutality that has taken place over such a long time. And what I'm suggesting is that the animosities that are there are what we see erupting today. And again, we can deal with the event of the moment without dealing with the broader root cause. So the cradle of civilization transformed into the cradle of empires. Empires represented brute force overpowering others with an intent to build an empire. Civilization unleashed concepts of excess, wealth, power, and greed. The top of the power structure unleashed human abilities in service of warfare to enrich the emperor. Empire building began long before nationalities, religious affiliations, ethnic identities, and racial designations. Understanding contemporary conflicts requires stripping away the disguises that are used for distraction from the core incentive for warfare: wealth, power, and greed. Those disguises are religions, religious animosities, nationalism, the things that are used to incite people to want to go to fight. What is really behind, those are just tools to radicalize people. That what is really there is the drive for ever greater wealth and power. I selected the Balkans for this class because it exemplifies the process from agriculture to sedentary people without food attacking those with an excess of food, thereby leading to a protective edifice, warfare, and slavery. The Balkans are comprised of Slavic states. These were slave states that were places where people battled over food, and the vanquished were enslaved. Enslavement meant loss of freedom, brutality, rape, and murder the intensity of the feelings of the anger that is there is not just about one spark but one speech by some maniac who is inciting people to hate each other. It's much more deeply rooted. The template established thousands of years ago produced deep-seated resentments and grievances that have never been addressed, passed along from generation to generation. Contemporary savagery is rooted in the events that followed discovery of agriculture 10 to 12,000 years ago, the beginning of civilization. It remains unaddressed as brutal savagery blankets contemporary events. The Balkans are divided by nationalities and by religious affiliations. Croatia and Slovenia are tied to the West and the Habsburg Empire. They have contempt for the Serbians, who are connected to the Eastern powers, such as the Russian Empire, and the Bosnians, who represent a mix of the two. Add to it all the Ottoman Empire and Greece to the south, and there exists substantial nationalistic conflict. Croatia is aligned with Catholicism, while Serbia lines up with Orthodox Christianity. Their antagonism between each other is over their understanding of the Holy Ghost. Understand the hatreds that we'll see be vented in the Balkans in the 1990s are rooted in a difference between the understanding of the Holy Ghost? I don't think so. It's more about the brutality that has infested that land over a very long time. The Serbian, and then you also have Islam has a strong presence in Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Kosovo. Nationalism and religious passions present a very volatile landscape, which can be exploited by demagogues who wind up in a position of power. Class 1 is an introductory, this broad picture of what is behind much of what we will see. Then we will look at World Wars I and II, followed by the post-war and the death of Tito, who led Yugoslavia. Then we will get to the Civil War, in which Yugoslavia will disintegrate. We'll then look at the massacres in Srebrenica and Sarajevo. We'll get to the criminal trials that, after the fighting subsided, the World Court then brought those responsible for accountability. And the 8th class is left as an open class for discussion. Through it, I think you'll see many similarities to what we are experiencing in our own country, what we are seeing in Russia, Hungary. If you take Viktor Orban, you turn him over and you get Milosevic. So there's a lot from the history of the Balkans that really relates to contemporary events. Okay, with that, we can open up for comments and discussion.
Please use the raise your hand function if you have any questions. Sal, why did everybody move?
Why did everybody move?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, you said everybody was sort of in the same place, and then they kept on moving to Australia, and then they moved to Europe, and then they moved to North America. Was there a blight? Was there a plague? Was there just too many people?
No, there was fewer of the population, but environmental changes would compel the herds to move to different spots, and we humans simply follow the herds.
Anybody have any other questions
or comments?
Okay.
They don't have to be short. You can, whatever you have.
Nancy,
well, first of all, I want to compliment Sal on his maps. The map is worth 1,000 words to me. And I was just purely delighted, especially with the musical background. I thought it was just wonderful. Great experience. Well, anyway, I went to Yugoslavia myself back in about 1970. I was on a trip to Greece and we took a side trip to Yugoslavia. And it seemed very stone. Everything was stone, but the ice cream was the best ice cream I've ever had in my entire life. They used real cows for the milk and real ingredients, and you could actually, your vanilla ice cream actually had a flavor, unlike over here. So it was just delightful. And I thought the people there in Yugoslavia were extremely friendly, anxious to see Americans or anybody else, anybody from anywhere. And they were wonderful people. I was so sorry that Yugoslavia ended.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting stories about this is that there was a period where a place like Sarajevo, which had a very diverse population, and it was a very friendly, engaging place. And we're going to hear people talk about how their life was with Tito, who kept a lid on the factions that would be had acted out against each other over time. But once Tito died, it opened a path for the demagogues to take control. Yeah.
Arnold?
Yeah. So Sal, I recently heard Yuval Harari interviewed, and he made an interesting comment that I'd like your reaction to. And what he said was that in the past, wars and conflicts have been about land and food. Empires trying to expand their land or the need to get resources from others. But he said modern conflicts are more about stories. So if you think about your courses, us going into Vietnam had nothing to do with us wanting the land. Afghanistan, land, we didn't want land, it was a story. Israel and the Palestinians have land, they have food. It's all about a story, isn't it? So what do you think about that framework?
Yeah, thanks, Arnold. By the way, in the term paper that I send out, for all of the classes, I have excerpts from Harari in there because I follow his work a lot. It's really quite good. I look at the what he equates as the stories today are really about power and who's going to have the power. It's that when if I take the conflict in Ukraine, Russia can look at it as getting the grains of Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, and wanting the control over that. But I see it more as a drive to want to recreate the Russian Empire.
Yeah, lots of glory.
Oh, yeah.
And that meant domination. Domination becomes an end in and of itself. It's just that feeding that, I have dominion over you. And they all kind of work together. And I think, I think he makes a good point. It's kind of like I think we have to, overall, you know, one of the criticisms I get in my classes is that, you know, you don't have solutions. And I don't have solutions. I mean, I don't pretend I know the answer to it. I honestly, and I have to say, my own thoughts I find to be grandiose. I mean, I'd like to see a point where world leaders are people who are mature, responsible, smart people who can say, look, we've got to create a sustainable world, not just for me, but for all of us, so that we can live in harmony. It's when one wants to get domination over the other that inevitably we're fighting for that small group that wants to have dominion. And I believe my faith is that as our brains grow more and more intelligent, we will eventually observe that what we're doing is folly, and detrimental to all of us, that for our own survival, we need to care about the survival of others, that we have vested interest in it.
So when you talk about hope, Harari then concluded by saying that when conflicts are caused by stories and beliefs rather than the desire for land or conquer for food, there's hope of changing those stories.
Sure.
And that was his positive spin on it. And I thought that was
right. And look at the things that are used to enrage people.
Yes.
Right. Those are stories. Yes. They're not founded in any kind of fact. I mean, the thing of why would the Croatians have to hate the Serbians? Because of their different views of the Holy Ghost? I mean, you've got, at some point we have to get intelligent enough to say that's nonsense, but it's used as tools to get us going. I mean, I have felt for a long time that we could solve most of our social problems. We're rich enough. We could end homelessness. We could end poverty. We could end, people who are food insecure. We could end that. Why don't we? And my argument is we don't, because those are political tools that can be used by demagogues to drive wedges between people.
Yep.
And we've got to start seeing through that stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Coral?
Okay, who do we have? Who do you have?
Coral.
Carl. Go ahead, Carl.
There we are.
Hi, Carl.
Okay. I wanted to compliment Sal on his beginning, because unless you know the development and the history and geography of these places, you can't understand the current history. You've got to develop it, because it's and we tend to forget this very easily. And thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Carl. Yeah, it's if I get angry at someone and you look at it and you think, well, why are you getting angry? It's I understand the insult, and it's certainly warrants a reaction, but you're so much more angry, than out of proportion. Well, it's because it's not about that one insult. It's about the 32 that happened before. It's an accumulation. So, if you don't know what happened before, you can look at a conflict and think, wow, that's kind of disproportionate. But if you get the history, then it starts to make sense.
Morgana.
Yes, I have a couple of thoughts, but I'll just take a few. Is that the Balkans to me are not unique in human history at all. They just show what's happening all over the world and has been, for millennia, peoples, different tribes, different peoples, living either in peace by being united by an empire or by a larger, powerful group. And I would go into the stories from Yuval Harari. I believe that empires, right, it is first what you call greed or power, but the fact that they have been able to unite these different tribes over millennia is always because of a story. And the story to me includes culture and technology, and what these different powerful groups that we may call empires have to offer to those disparate tribes that have differences among themselves. For example, the Romans. I mean, there were so many different cultures and languages, but they united them also through their culture, their technology. And when you look at those descendants and the places where the Romans have been, my gosh, half of the languages are Roman, the culture's Roman. They've left a lot. So it is not all bad, in my opinion. I shouldn't say that. They have left a lot of positives for those different groups. And I think it's only when the powerful empires or the groups that are able to unite them die off, or there's some reason they stop, that the story falls apart. And then you look at gaze at your navels rather than at the big picture. And going back to Tito in the Balkan area, the story was socialism. And kids learned it at school, you're all united. Now you may look at the practical reality that was there, sure, but there was a story too. So it is always story or culture, technology. It is not always just brute power, because you cannot rule over so many different people over millennia. You don't have enough military. You have to unite by story.
Yeah, and not only unite, but also divide, right? I mean, it is, if I can convince you to be that I'm going to do something that's going to harm you, and I make you afraid of me, then your fear will quickly morph into hate. And if I can get you there, then you'll want to attack and kill me. So it's all of that comes into play. Yeah. Okay, Bob, I see your hand.
Madeline?
But let's go to Madeline, and then we'll go to Bob Goggins.
Madeline?
Yeah.
Madeline, you're still having
talking issues.
With her.
Still can't hear you.
Well, can you do
chat? Can you write it in chat?
Can you? Okay, we'll try back. Bob, let's jump to Bob Goggins then.
I think the tragedy, excuse me, of that map you put up, Sal, about the different ways that humans traverse the earth. The tragedy is that everywhere we went, 95% or so of the wildlife became extinct. And one good example of that was Madagascar, which was settled by humans late in the game. And they, since it's separated from Africa by 800 miles or so, had a unique collection of wildlife had developed there. And so humans got there relatively recently, and that unique collection of wildlife disappeared, or 95% of it. Another example is Jared Diamond did a book a number of years ago called Collapse, and in part of that book he told the story of the settlement of Easter Island around the year 900 or thereabouts, and it was a very lush, wonderful place, great trees that people could eat the fruit of and make canoes out of and so forth. And they got down to the last tree, and some guy cut down the last tree, and they spent a lot of their energy putting up those monuments and so forth. And in 1722, when a Dutch explorer went there, he found a bunch of people who were totally poverty-stricken. And yet 500 or so years before that, they lived in this very rich place that provided them with most of what they wanted. So it seems that it looks like we kind of destroy everything. Every place we go, we destroy it. And we see some of the effects right now. You know, scientists talk about climate change and so forth, and on TV you hear people denying that it's either happening or that it's man-made and so forth, and yet we look out the window and hear more about heat waves and fires and things like that. So I wonder if we're going to destroy ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Bob. In my studies of the Native Americans or indigenous peoples, one of the things that I find fascinating, and I can't speak to it with any kind of authority, but one of the great distinctions between the Native Americans and the Europeans who were invading. Remember, the Europeans are coming looking for trade to take resources that they can use for more and more trade. The Native Americans were more of living with nature as it was. You know, you had a huge population of buffalo and woolly mammoth and other species that roamed these lands, and they didn't overkill them. It wasn't until you brought in the element of trade, because then you're not just taking from nature what you need to survive. You're saying, no, I'm going to kill more of them because I want to take that resource and trade it. And so there's a book called The Merchant Kings, and it talks about how these companies became really nation states. And it's all about America and how not just America, but South Africa and other places where they totally, the fur trading in the Northwest, Alaska, Northwest, that what you had is you wound up depleting all the animals that you could use for fur trading. And again, so people had been living there for thousands of years, didn't deplete the animal population. They lived within it. But then when we brought in trade and profiteering and all of that, excess wealth, power, the animal kingdom suffered. And you're right. If we don't change our thinking, when I say we, I don't mean us individually. I mean us as a species have a radical rethinking about our place on this planet. We will destroy it and ourselves in the process. It's just it's inevitable. You know, we have Putin is talking, this has been for a couple of weeks, about how he you know, has not ruled out nuclear war. You know, it's again, it's all, and what is Putin doing? It's more of that empire building, recreation, and all of that. So it really, it's up to humans to change the way we interact with our world and each other, or we're going to go the route of the dinosaurs, only it ain't going to take a meteor. It's going to take ourselves to do it.
Unfortunately, yes.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, Sal. How many different languages are spoken within the Balkans, and to what extent do linguistic differences exaggerate conflict? In other words, you don't sound like me, therefore you must be bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you probably had Greek, Aramaic, Russian spoken through there, I would suspect, but I don't know for I can't say what they were. But what was more remarkable is that the peoples, even though they spoke different languages, they got along very well, at least according to the histories that I've read. That's what they say, is that they got along very well. What we get, though, is once we come up with agriculture and we're fighting each other and we're taking control, the added food meant you could expand population. Mm-hmm. And the emperors had an interest in wanting to expand population because it added to their protective edifice. And so it becomes a cycle, a systematic, you know, thing that goes on. And, you know, we need to attack these people so we can get more land, so we can make more food, so we can get more people. And then we're going to need more food, so we have to attack other people to get theirs. I mean, it's that kind of thing that keeps going on. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Isla?
Oh, I was just going to mention the map showing the distribution of people around the world. Recent excavations in Illinois, northern Illinois and southern Idaho have placed humans at least 20,000 years ago here in the North American continent, and about 14,000 years ago in the South American continent. So that map is a little outdated.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what's going to happen. We'll keep discovering, you know, stuff like that, and it will alter the tale. Yeah, sure.
Sandra?
I'm wondering why you haven't mentioned the United States or America as an empire.
Mm.
And unless you're saving that. But as in the 90s, remember, after the end of Marxist ideology, we pretty much have declared we declare the end of history. And with the successor of market capitalism, democracy, loosely understood, with the United States as the unipower. And we really like that idea of being the only power. And I just wanted your comments on that. But one quick thing on Balkan languages, it's basically what used to be called Serbo-Croatian, but they're very similar. You know, all of the ones spoken, and they use both the Cyrillic and the Latin alphabet.
Yeah, no, but look, the American Empire, I mean, from the very beginning, the invasion was, you know, the Europeans wanting to expand their empire. They wanted to take these lands and claim them for themselves. Perpetrated genocide to get rid of the people who were already here. We then get into the imperialism that took place on the continent of North America. So you have these invaders come in and they populate the coast, and then they start attacking the natives to take over more and more of their land. The Mexican War was an imperial war. I mean, you know, I don't know how you relate to it as anything else. Japan, by the mid 19th century, America needs ports to be able to ship its cotton. And what does it do? It goes into Japan and says, Japan, you know, you got to become more like us. You need to open up. And mind you, we don't call it imperialism. We opened up Japan. No, you attacked Japan is what you did. And so, you know, we have all these spins that are there. But no, look, we now have troops in, what is it, 175 countries?
About that.
And we may not, you know, say that that they're our colony, but when you've placed your troops there already, you know, you're kind of making a footprint that, you know, has to be viewed as imperial. And the more we continue along that way, I mean, it's just inevitably that our species is going to consume itself. Yeah.
Madeline, let's give you another shot again. Nope.
But we'll work on those lip reading skills. Oh, look in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, look in the chat. What's in the chat?
I actually was.
The only chat was your email address.
Did you get?
You can do chat again.
Did you get anything in your chat, Sal?
I
don't see anything.
Yeah.
I don't see anything.
I have too many things to follow. I can't. I don't know where it is. Anyway,
And
I think
Madeline's email address is wrong anyway. No @ sign.
Go ahead, Carl.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of two things. As the population of the world continues to increase, we've got to do something. Or, as you say, we will destroy ourselves.
We're worse.
And the other was, at one time, I read an interesting book called East and West that talks of the history of development and a pendulum effect. And it moved from east into the west. Now it's moving back to the east. Slowly but surely. That's what's going to happen by population, if nothing else. And maybe the next war will be over water.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I look at the Balkans as really being a dividing line between East and West. I mean, Serbia is more tied to the east, where Croatia is more tied to the west, and so you kind of get that division there that boils up into conflict. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. It's sure.
If everybody can unmute and give Sal applause for attacking this difficult topic, we really
Thank you,
appreciate it,
Sal.
Sal.
Bravo.
Thank you, everyone.
Very good.
Looking forward to the rest.
Next week, we're going to look at World War I and World War II, all of which brewed up.
Oh, yeah.
Right here in the Balkans. So.
Bye all.
Indeed.
Thank you.
See you.